And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all you on LinkedIn. No matter where you are watching, it could be one of those three, or maybe even some other time. I'm Marion Spears Carr, and this is my Healthcare Thought Leadership LinkedIn live show that's normally on Fridays, but because of a special treat, having a friend of mine come on the show and talking about a topic that's really, really important to the work that we do, all of us do in healthcare. The topic today is, why does innovation even exist? And what's the problems to be solved? My guest is a good friend of mine, Mr. Todd Dunn. He is the vice president. He is the vice president of enterprise innovation at Advocate Health. He's been named one of the top innovators in healthcare in 2023 and by Modern Healthcare. Todd, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself a little bit more. Thank you for coming.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me. I always like to introduce myself as a family man first. I'm married to Wendy. December hits 29 years, so
Oh,
that's a
congratulations.
gift in life. Three kids: Oliver, Emma, Ross, pro ball player, med student, pro ball player. So we're pretty busy in the house. It is my background. I joined here in February of 20, which is really interesting. Before that, I was at Intermountain Healthcare as the director of innovation there. But an interesting kind of career path. My master's is actually in supply chain, as you know, Marion, because
Yep.
we're good buddies. But then I've worked for Cisco, Siemens, McKesson, and GE. And where my path to innovation really started was at McKesson, just asking questions about how to improve operations and the inputs to it. But then at GE, I was fortunate enough to meet Beth Comstock, the amazing leader who was their chief marketing officer. I heard she was doing something with innovation. And
Hmm.
so I reached out to her and I asked her if I could be part of it. That program eventually became known as GE FastWorks. And through that time, I got to meet some really interesting thought leaders around the world, and they shaped the way I think about it and now the way I do about it. And here I am.
Well, we're really glad to have you to talk about this topic. This is something that I've been following quite a bit in my world. For
Mhm.
those of you who are watching Healthcare Thought Leadership for the first time, I am the managing director for an executive search group called Comar Partners. I run the healthcare and life sciences practice. Been in the industry for a long time. One of the most funny things about Todd is, and myself, I'm from the part of North Carolina he lives in, and I live in Georgia where he's from. So
That's right. We
it's really
places.
interesting. Yeah, a little bit crazy. We just traded places. If you're
That's
watching the
right.
show live, please let us know in the comments. And if you have questions for Todd, please let us know that you're there. And let's just jump right into the topic.
Yeah.
This discussion started because I was at a McGuire Woods digital health dinner where you were one of the speakers, and I
Mhm.
was fascinated, one, with this idea around what's happening in the healthcare space, what
Mm.
people think are being innovative, what people think is being disruptive, and you really talked about why it mattered and why is disruption, why is innovation matter. So that's where this topic came up of, why does innovation, particularly in healthcare, even exist?
Mhm.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about uh, what problems you feel like are really critical to be solved in healthcare. And one of the things I
Yeah.
love about your background, I'm going to back up for a moment. And for those of you who are watching, one of the things I love about Todd's background is he came from the Siemens side. He came from that side of the business over to the healthcare delivery side, but he does have that supply chain experience as well.
Mhm.
So I think you bring a very unique perspective. But let's talk a little bit about what your thoughts are. You and I have talked about this topic a lot. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about innovation and why it matters and what's being done out there. And again, for those of you watching live, let us know where you're watching from. Todd, I'll hand it off to you.
It's a great question. I've thought a lot about that since you and I originally met. Innovation really exists to translate the strategy into a positive outcome for a consumer and for the company. It's really a translation mechanism. It's a verb. I often also say that I believe that empathy is the heartbeat of healthcare. And the reason that I bring that up is I think a lot of people go into this for the right reasons. They really do, because we know that if we innovate really well, Marion, that there's a patient or a provider who's going to be positively impacted in some way. And that's really why innovation exists in healthcare. Strip it all away. It's all about bringing better health and better experience to the patient and to the people who are providing the care. And when we forget that as innovators, I think we've lost our way.
I agree. And one of the things that really struck me, and I actually walked up to you after you finished talking,
Yeah.
was this that humanistic connection. Why it
Mhm.
really matters to what we're trying to do. And by the way, I just want to show one of our listeners and watchers in the audience, is a gentleman named Michael Young. Innovation is his middle name, by the way. And how could he miss this session with
Funny.
us? And he's watching
Welcome,
from
Michael.
Pinehurst, North Carolina. Michael's a great friend and
Go
great.
tee it up after this, Michael. You have a nice round of golf down there.
Exactly. So one of the things we talked about is some of the work you did at Intermountain about really changing the paradigm of what innovation meant for their patient population and what the objectives were. And I would love for you to maybe give us a little bit of background about some of the things that you did at Intermountain, because they did make a big difference.
The thing I think I'm most proud of is the work that we did to bring needle-free blood draw to patients. Meaning, once you have a catheter in your arm, which most of us are aware of, a nurse or phlebotomist has to walk in the room basically and say, "I'm sorry, but I need to draw your blood." And at the time, there was a needle-free blood draw device that came out on the market, and we pursued it and deployed it across the hospitals. I'm now on the board of a company that has developed a breakthrough device in that space, even over the original one. The reason that it meant so much to me, Marion, is in 2014, my dad had a stroke, and I went to the hospital to hang out with him. He was actually at the University of Utah Hospital, and you'll appreciate this being from the South. He said,
Yep.
"Hey, son, you can't sleep in the room with me in that chair over there. You got to either sleep outside the door or inside the door." And I was like, "Why do I have to do that?" And he said, "You only have one job in the night, and that's to keep them from poking me with a cold needle and waking me up."
Wow.
And
Yep.
so
Sounds like
about
my dad.
4:30, and yeah, well, 4:30 in
Yeah.
the morning, they come in the room, and the lady said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Dunn, but I have to draw your blood." And it also hit me that people who are in healthcare want to bring calmness and healing to their patients, but yet a needle is diametrically opposed to that.
Hmm.
And so it kind of put me on this mission of trying to remove the needle from all the blood draws. And the name of this amazing company, which I don't get paid for sales. I don't get
Yeah.
paid for talking about this, just to be very transparent.
Yeah.
The name of that company is Avia Vascular, and I think it's a game changer for the providers and the patients and the family members. I'm really proud of that one because it was very humanistic. It focused on rethinking the procedure that's the most prevalent procedure in all of healthcare, and removing the emotional and social pain of doing that, not to mention the physical pain.
Not to mention the physical pain. And matter of fact, and that that customer experience of getting blood drawn, just that one simple thing.
Mhm.
I can remember. I've had a lot of injuries. You and I've talked about it. I've been a patient in the hospital more than times than I should have, but I can remember. Most of my experiences were positive, but just that
Mhm.
particular situation was all. And I'm not a needle person. I don't really struggle with needles, but just that whole customer experience. One of the things that was really interesting about that you talked about, and I would love for you to talk about more, is where can innovation make a difference in dealing with the patient populations that are at risk? Because let's face it, we have
Mhm.
in the Appalachian region where I live, we have at-risk populations. In the inner cities,
Yeah,
there's at-risk population. You name it. But
yeah.
talk about how the innovation that where's the innovation needed, and what are things that are happening in terms of
Mhm.
dealing and helping address those people, that group of people, those different groups of people, excuse me, and where they are in terms of the care and access. What's happening from that perspective, from an innovation perspective?
Well, the first thing I want to say is Gene Woods is our CEO, and
Mhm.
I've literally never met a CEO in healthcare more passionate about making a difference for the people who literally need us most.
Mhm.
One of the projects I'm really proud of that we've done, and it's kind of changing the business model of it, is utilizing a really powerful program that we learned of out from my good friend Shreya Kongovi of UPenn called Impact, but it's a really structured way of community health workers. And these are people, Marion, that come from your community who know you, who know your culture, and they go into your home and they look for needs of food and electricity and transportation, and they're there to serve you and have a very humanistic connection with you. The reason that I bring it up is we've often thought a high touch care model couldn't be afforded.
Hmm.
Well, that she literally just proved that assumption. It's and the dichotomy of that. And you take someone who normally goes to a doctor 3 or 4 times a year, and maybe an average of an hour a year that they see us. Well, they're 8,765 hours in a year. So the health system really has a small chance of serving you the way that it truly wants to.
Hmm.
And so we've adopted a community health worker program that reaches out. I just looked at some data recently, and 1,300 and something people this year who've needed food, transportation, they needed their rent paid for. And so that's something that I think is really going to come because communities heal each other. I believe that the power is in the communities, and how do we put programs in place that harness the empathy that's not just in healthcare but in humanity to take care of people where they are, and especially the people who really need us to serve them.
So what I'm hearing is innovation not always technically focused
Oh,
or some
Lord have mercy,
technology.
no.
It's
Mm-mm.
a how it's being delivered. It's this mindset. And by the way, I want to jump back to something. We got a great echoing of your thought. David said, Todd, as a resident, I learned to write orders, particularly on the night before discharge, to not wake
Yeah.
a patient between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. so they
Well, I'm
could
going to tell you
finally
that
sleep.
guy who just that guy. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your words. That
Yeah,
guy
no,
who
no,
just
you're
put
good.
that comment in there, Dr. Kazenza, holds a special place in my heart because he's a doctor with Atrium Healthcare,
Okay. Good for
and
good for you.
Dr. Kazenza and I've had the opportunity to work together.
Yeah.
And it's doctors like Dr. Kazenza who remind me of empathy in healthcare. A doctor who wants to innovate for patients. As you can tell, he was changing things even before we had a needle free option. He
Yeah.
was changing things to not interrupt the patient. And now we need to especially innovate on behalf of the doctors and taking away documentation and those types of
Mhm.
things. But it's stories like David's that inspire me to make sure that when we innovate, it's back to your original point, Marion, it's
Yeah.
all about the people. It's why I don't really like the term digital health. When I think about digital health, I think about that little thing you can bring up and look at the health of your computer and see where your
Yep.
memory is and your
Yep.
storage is. Or you go into a security operations center, a SOC, and you see that. That to me is digital health.
Hmm.
What we're trying to do is understand and have a relationship with human health. And if that's through a community health worker, if it's through a dialogue need and need from Dr. Kazenza with a patient, if it's through maybe a digital piece of equipment that
Hmm.
allows a patient to create a relationship with their health because now they have data and then share that relationship with a doctor or nurse who they have a relationship with. To me, it's all about that creating alliance around better health using whatever means we can, stopping by and seeing you and saying hi to you, making a call, checking your pulse from afar with a Bluetooth device. We just can't lose sight of the fact that we innovate for people, point blank. And then if we do that right, I just fundamentally have a belief that the business will be better also, especially the business of healthcare.
I remember writing in my notes your comment about the term digital health, and that took that I wrote after I left that meeting. I wrote down like that's interesting because in the world of my
Mhm,
work, um, I work with companies that are considered digital health companies, but I love the
mhm,
idea around does that particular platform, does that particular piece of technology is it
mhm,
not only disruptive, but is it ultimately going to make the patient experience better? Is it going to have the impact that we're talking about? And that's why I wanted to have
mhm.
this conversation. So, Dr. Conzenza, thank you for letting us know your thoughts and being part of the live show. If you're watching live, please let us know in the comments that you're watching. We really want to know that you're there. Want to know if you have questions for Todd. Todd, you were at you're part of this merger of Advocate and Atrium now, and
Mhm,
I'm really interested for you to talk about, again, from this humanistic perspective, from
mhm,
an innovation perspective, where are the challenges now? What are
mhm,
where do we need innovative thought to make a difference in the patient experience, be it at the hospital at
mhm,
home, be it extended higher levels of acuity being dealt with at home. I love the
mhm,
fact that Dr. Newworth, who you were speaking with, talked
mhm.
about
Yeah,
context of care. Where do you
yeah.
feel like need is the next frontier for innovative thought when it comes to healthcare?
I think a lot is being done and needs to be done to give doctors, nurses, and patients human time back together.
Hmm.
We're asking too many clinical teams to type in computers more than talk with people. I think we really need to solve for that. And there's some interesting technologies coming out on that. You may have seen a press release about what we're doing in using DAX Express to relieve the burden of documentation. Where do I really think we need to rethink the world?
Hmm.
Human connection outside of a clinical office or hospital. If the average person spends 3 hours a year in a clinical setting, it means we have 8,762.8 hours where they don't. And you can look back to Jerry Sternen's story of Feed the Children in Vietnam and the power of positive deviance, where communities came together to help lift the health of children and reduce malnourishment. And I think that we're going to play more of a role in that sector as a healthcare system as payment models change, et cetera. And our heart helps us lead and advocate that way because of Gene's leadership. I think that's where we're going to go, to where we are convening the structures that allow people to help people more in their communities. We will be involved without a doubt, and we will be there to serve. I just think we're going to build better bridges to communities to know how to help each other more, because we just simply have a belief that communities want to do that, and we're going to play a role in it.
I think, and that's I got so fired up about that particular piece of it
Mhm.
when you were talking, and that's I walked up to you and was like, Todd, we got to talk about this. For those of you
Yeah.
who are watching my show, this is Healthcare Thought Leadership. It's normally on Fridays at 12:30. So a little LinkedIn live show that I started to share my amazing network with my network and beyond. And for those of you who've watched other episodes, you'll notice my background's a little different today. I'm not coming from my office high atop a mountain in North Georgia. I'm actually working from Nashville today, having some healthcare client meetings in Nashville. So I'm at an office of one of our clients, and so forgive the background. But Todd, I want to come back to
Mm,
something you and I talked about one day. Is this idea around there's so many people out there that's trying to come in from the outside of healthcare
mhm,
to make huge differences. And when we really think about disruption, this is where it's going to be coming from, most likely outside of what's the traditional healthcare delivery
mm,
side of the business. Share with
mm,
us some things you've learned about that's happening that's going to really
mm.
wake some people up out there, because you were sharing a couple of those things with me. What's happening outside of the traditional healthcare industry that could make amazing difference for patients and is potentially disruptive that we need to be aware of?
One of the best examples of a disruption, and I was gifted in life to know Clay Christensen pretty well. Disruption is really something as good or better for a lower cost. It's easier to access so that more people can take advantage of it. Someone I admire greatly is the chief strategy officer of Intermountain Healthcare. His name is Dan Lillianquist, and
Hmm.
he put together this idea of Civica RX, and it's a business model that's completely different around generic drugs, which we all know they're just bad actors in that space. They charge way too much. Someone tries to get in, they drop the price to keep people out so they can manipulate supply, demand, make a lot of money.
Hmm.
And John Arnold and his foundation, and a big applaud to him as a philanthropist and other systems, created Civic RX. It's just a different business model around generic drugs, and it standardizes or stabilizes supply, stabilizes demand, stabilizes prices. That is such a disruptive thing to the old
Mhm.
traditional bad actors of generic drugs.
Mhm.
The reason that I call it out is that business models are the unit of competition. It's not just this piece of technology, but it's how's the business model structured around it. And
Mhm.
you're starting to see United partner with Walmart. You're watching Amazon create their own thing, but now starting to partner to give referrals to hospitals this season.
Mhm.
The thing that's going to best serve healthcare, healthcare providers, especially to win and thrive in a market like that is to think about the unit of competition really as the business model. And you and I have talked about our design for impact process here that's all about business model innovation. And oh man, I'm just gifted with such an amazing team of experts in that space and understanding consumers that that's
Mhm.
what encourages me the most is that I think healthcare needs to really follow and put an innovation system in place that really harnesses the principles of medicine. We diagnose before we prescribe, and unfortunately, sometimes innovators prescribe before they diagnose. And then we use a scientific method to de-risk things and to learn and understand. We use theory to admit we don't know.
Mhm.
That's what's coming. Business model is the unit of competition and the unit of winning, but yet you have to have a system to know how to do that. And I'm just watching these big behemoth companies do that. And then some of these startups coming up with really wise business models wrapped around value propositions and technologies that are they're going to change the game, and we better all get in and do it together.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. One of the areas that we focus on in our search business is now private equity backed, venture capital backed healthcare.
Yep.
Matter of fact, that's why I'm in Nashville. That's why I'm here quite often. A lot's happening in that space. And I
Hmm.
do think the traditional healthcare business model is being tipped over completely upside down. To use Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point as a reference.
Yeah.
I think we're very close, right? We're very close to the tipping point where things are going to change dramatically. One of the things I do wanted to ask you, Todd, and this is we didn't. I think we kind of talked about this, but this was a topic of another uh, healthcare LinkedIn live show I did was around the silos in healthcare and how that sometimes impedes innovation
Hmm.
from happening. And you've talked a lot about the collaborative environment that you were at Intermountain and now you're at Advocate.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about why healthcare leaders, and I have a lot of healthcare leaders that follow me and involve and are part of my network.
Yeah.
What can we do as healthcare leaders to begin and break down those barriers that have been really put in place in some ways to impede us from being successful? What are your thoughts on that?
In a pure way of thinking about it, I actually believe people want to collaborate. Part of the
That's the
problem
point.
is we haven't designed systems that enable effective collaboration. And I don't believe effective collaboration happens just because we have a relationship.
Hmm.
I believe effective collaboration happens because we have an alliance. And the natural question would be, well, what causes an alliance? And in my heart of hearts, I believe that within healthcare, the thing that causes the alliance is the problem that we're trying to solve
Hmm.
or the opportunity we're pursuing for a better healthcare system. And so I think, like with our design for impact process that you and I've talked about,
Yeah.
it starts with an understanding and an alliance around the contextual problem. And when we spend time doing that, or as a Dr. Kazenza would tell you, when we
Yeah.
spend enough time doing a great diagnosis, the prescription can be better. And so I think we've got to open our minds a little bit to designing systems that enable better collaboration and around prioritized problems versus just trying to run after innovation. It has
Hmm.
shown over the last 10 years when we do that, it's just not effective, Marion.
Yeah.
That to me will break down the silos because now all of a sudden an alliance is where everyone engaged wins. And by putting a system in like our Design for Impact system with language, tools, and methods that
Mm-hmm.
translate strategy into impact, that is going to allow us all to harness empathy and the passion of uplifting the health of communities. That's the key to this, in my opinion.
And again, at the risk of sounding like I'm playing to my audience, is what I got so excited when I heard you talk was that I believe that's true. I believe that when if at the heart of this is if we as an organization, and I'm talking about the organization, the great organization of healthcare
Hmm.
all are really focused on making decisions through the lens of empathy and saying, okay,
That's it.
what's the need? What's the real need? Are we solving the right problem? And matter of fact,
Mhm.
that was the topic that you and I came up with was about problem solving. So let me ask you this question. Um we're at a point now where you're right. A lot of this is already happening.
Mhm.
Who needs to hear this message now? Who in the marketplace needs to hear the message of
Mhm.
we need to be focused and looking at problem solving based through that lens of empathy, as I said, or through what you taught about? Who needs to hear this message? Who's not hearing it? I guess whose door do we need to go knock on now, Todd, to
Mhm.
say you got to get on the train?
Um, I'll answer it this way. We can't ever stop knocking on the doors.
Got it.
I think everybody needs to hear it. Everybody needs to be reminded of it.
Hmm.
I think I know a lot of healthcare systems innovators and other people around the country. I think as innovators, we need to take the lead of putting the system in place that harnesses that empathy, that passion. Because what is innovation really? I don't get to determine that because I have an interesting title. Innovation is really only determined by the consumer, the customer of that innovation. Did it make their life better? In Clay Christensen's jobs theory, did it help them make the progress that they wanted to make for the customer, the consumer, the company? We all need to be reminded of it. And if you
Hmm.
have a system that's driven around understanding the progress that people want to make, and you go and you interview them deeply and you observe them in their context, I believe that activity of doing that work ignites empathy. And we all need to hear it all the time. I think the big message is that healthcare systems, we need to control our own destiny a little bit better. We need to be the driver, not the rider. And
Hmm.
the only way to really be the driver in revamping our business models is to have a business model innovation system in place.
Hmm.
And so that I think every healthcare system needs to think about the discipline like of a clinical process model, but they need an innovation process model. They need to think about the standard language of medicine and what is the standard language of business model innovation or how to understand consumers. So everybody and all the time, because this is a life journey that never stops. And we need to be reminded of it every day. But we better get after this whole system of business model innovation a little bit better.
And I think that's a great way to bring our conversation to close. Todd, how
Hmm.
can people connect with you? Because you've got
Hmm.
so much more to share. We're believe I don't know if
Hmm.
you know this, but we're already 9 minutes into it. That's how fast these kind of
Wow.
conversations always go. How can people
Mhm.
connect with you, Todd?
LinkedIn's wonderful. Todd.dunn@gmail.com is another wonderful one. I always enjoy the conversations. I learn from everyone I encounter, and I'm grateful for that. It's a blessing and a principle of my life is lifelong learning. Would love to connect with you, talk about how you view the world. Please teach me of what I don't know, and I'll share what I do know, and hopefully it will be uplifting to you and your job, your context, your company, whoever you serve.
I agree. And if you're in my network and do connect with Todd, I've learned so much from him already, and getting to share my thoughts with him is. I drive him a little bit crazy. I like Todd. I got an idea. Let me call you. And
I
then
love
he's
it.
like, he goes, I'm busy, dude. No, he doesn't ever say that. He doesn't ever say that. He is a busy man.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Marion Spears Carr. I am the managing director of healthcare life sciences for executive search group called Comar Partners. We work with healthcare companies all around the world. I am based in Georgia. I am from North Carolina. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please send me a connect request. Let us know your thoughts. Um, and we're going to wrap it up now. But Todd, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for taking some time out on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm in Nashville and to have this conversation. For those of you who watch this as recording, still let us know that you watch so we know that you're out there, and any thoughts you have, any questions. Have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. And oh, by the way, I love this. I'm going to bring this up because this is Doug Luckett. Thank you, gentlemen. Disrupting entitlement and complacency through innovation and regard for humans and workflow improvement can help us restore trust in healthcare delivery. And Doug, you're
Well said,
absolutely on
Doug.
point.
Well
Absolutely
said.
on point. Uh, we need to restore trust because right now that's a challenge. So, Doug, thanks for the dropping in on the show. Have a great day, everyone, and we're going to end the
Thanks,
stream.
everybody.
Talk to you soon.